Huh. Okay. Wonder what's going on there. Interesting. We'll do a little air-to-air mission. Got him. Target locked. Alright, I'll leave it alone. Today, I'm going to do something that is going to really annoy a small subset of people who are big fans of HDzero. This is a tiny trainer. It's a really fun little spec racing quad. Like all the best racing drones, it comes with an HDzero video transmitter on it because HDzero has the best, lowest, most consistent latency and the best image quality. HDzero is hands down the best FPV system for racing. But I'm going to take the HDzero out of it and put in the DJI O4 video transmitter, the little single board one that I like to call the Lite, although DJI just calls it the O4, which I think is really confusing. I'm going to put it in there because, well, I need to test the O4, and I think this is the perfect bird to put it in. I'll tell you why. I'll do it, and we're going to look at the results. I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today. Here's why I think this is the perfect quadcopter to put the O4 Lite in. And I am going to keep calling it the O4 Lite, even though that's not what DJI would prefer, because I just think it's too confusing to do it any other way. The whole point of the O4 Lite is that it is smaller and lighter than the Pro version of the O4. It's a single board solution, and that means it can go in smaller and lighter quadcopters. But it can't go into a 1S tiny whoop. Well, that's not entirely true. So the minimum voltage for this thing, when DJI first announced, well, I say when DJI first announced it, when the leaks first started coming out, it was leaked as a 1 to 3S video transmitter. And that is not the case. The minimum voltage for this thing is 3.7 volts. I tested it on my bench power supply. At 3.8 volts, it's fine. At 3.7 volts, it turns off. So it's not going to run off a 1S battery. But manufacturers are already releasing, announcing anyway, 1S quadcopters based on this video transmitter. How are they doing it? It's very simple. They just have a 5-volt step-up regulator built in. So this will be used on 1S quadcopters, but it won't be used on the 1S Flite controllers that are designed to pass battery voltage straight through to the video transmitter. Again, a situation where DJI has done something that maybe isn't exactly what you would like it to be, and it's pretty annoying here in the moment, but in 4 to 6 months, when everybody has switched over their hardware, everyone will be happy. And yeah, that's a theme with DJI. Want to be happy? Just buy all new hardware. Backwards compatibility? Sometimes, but sometimes no. There you go. Installation of the air unit went pretty quickly. Dropped into the 25mm mounting, exactly the same as the HDzero video transmitter, and it plugged into the DJI plug on the Flite controller, the same as the HDzero video transmitter. I was tempted to use this circular polarized antenna that came with the HDzero video transmitter, but I'm going to stick with the antenna that DJI gave me. It's only fair to test it in its delivered configuration. It is a UFL connector here, though, and so you could easily put an aftermarket 5.8 gigahertz antenna on there. And the camera mounting, I'm going to rig something up with double-sided tape. The thing is, today, the day of release, a lot of frame manufacturers don't have answers for this oddball mounting, but, in a few months they will, and then this video will have been irrelevant if I just show you how. I'm just going to rig something up with tape. Now, the Flite controller that we're using on this build doesn't have a voltage regulator for the air unit plug. It just passes battery voltage through, and that's because it assumes that it's going to be used with a low voltage battery. The maximum voltage rating for the Flite controller is lower than the voltage rating for the air unit. But that's not going to be true when we're using the air unit Lite, which is only rated up to 13.6 volts. If this was a 4S build, we would fry it. And that's why I want to show you that I made this. This is a DJI plug with a voltage regulator soldered in line. And I'm going to be straight with you. I forgot whether a tiny trainer runs on 3S or 4S, and I kind of panicked. I was like, I need a regulator. And it turns out that a tiny trainer runs on 3S, so it actually would have been fine, but whatever. The regulator is rated for 5 volts at 3 amps or 12 volts at 2 amps, which is just fine. The air unit pulls 1.8 amps at 5 volts, which is about 9 watts, which is whatever, 12 divided by 9 or something. It's however many amps, that it's fine. That's plenty. So we're going to use this, even though technically we don't have to. Make sure we plug it in the right way. We got to have the in and the out facing the right way. Here's what it looks like now that I've got the build all back together. And you can see that the air unit just dropped right in there in place of the HDzero. This is the easiest way to get a DJI air unit into one of these smaller builds. And I think it's going to be good on everything, certainly down to 75 or 85 millimeters, certainly if you're running off a 2S battery, and can be made to work on a 1S 65 millimeter build, although the weight is not like ideal for that. It's just a little bit heavier than it really ought to be, and it's going to struggle a little bit with the 1S batteries, although people definitely are going to, people are putting the O3 air unit onto 75 millimeter builds right now, and that's way too heavy to fly well, but they're going to do it. So this is just really a game changer for these smaller builds. In my review of the O4 Pro, we went over the basic specifications of the O4 units, both the Pro and the Lite, and we talked about the new features like the 60 megabit per second mode and the racing mode. So I don't want to retread that ground. I'll put a link in the video description below to the exact timestamp where I went over that stuff in the O4 Pro review. But I do want to take a look at the menu options in the O4 Lite and just see if anything is different. And I know for a fact one thing's going to be different. If we go to transmission power, you can see that the O4 Lite maxes out at 700 milliwatts. But the difference in output power between the Pro and the Lite is even more than that, because the Pro has 2 antennas and 2 power amplifiers. So when you set the Pro to 1200 milliwatts, it's outputting 1200 milliwatts twice, and that means you get better range and better penetration out of it. Whereas with the Lite, not only does it not go to 1200 milliwatts, it only goes to 700 milliwatts, it's only got 1 antenna. So it's basically putting out about 1/4 the power of the O4 Pro at its maximum power setting. 700 milliwatts times 1 versus 1200 milliwatts times 2. And roughly speaking, 1/4 the power equals 1/2 the range, all else being equal. And of course, all else is not equal, but that gives you a ballpark of approximately what you can expect out of these systems at max power. As far as channel mode goes, though, I think everything's going to be the same. If we go to manual channel mode, we should see we have access to the 60 megahertz, 60 megabit per second mode, and we have access to the same channels and frequencies. That's no problem. And if we enable racing mode, we do have access to the racing mode. We can see we've changed the frame rate and stuff. But it's worth keeping in mind that even when they're both, under all modes, the Lite unit has slightly more latency than the Pro unit. For example, in racing mode, the Pro unit has a latency of about 15 milliseconds to first pixel change. The Lite unit has a latency of about 22 milliseconds to first pixel change. If you want more information about that, I'll put a link to Chris Rosser's excellent technical deep dive on these systems. And in fact, I'll give you it's a long video with a lot of technical stuff in it. I'll put a link specifically to the latency chapter so you can see the charts that he created and know the latency in all the different modes. We don't have the 4K 100 either. We have 4K 60, 50, and 30. Oh, and not the 48 mode either. What about the 48 frame per second? We don't have that. And we don't have the 2.7K modes. Shut up. We just have 1080p 30, 50, 60, 100, and 120, and 4K 30, 50, 60. Is that, if I change the aspect ratio here, it's the same. Frankly, I'm not sure the loss of the 2.7K modes is that big of a deal, because I always flew 2.7K 100 because it was the highest resolution 100 frame per second mode. But it seems like DJI has taken away 2.7K 100 for 3, which is what I like to fly. You can do 2.7K 100, but only in 16.9. And Chris Rosser discovered that if you're not in racing mode, the lowest latency is 1080p 100 anyway. So I would probably be flying 1080p 100 4.3 for my freestyling, and then anybody who's going to be doing like professional cinema work is going to skip 2.7K and go straight to 4K anyway. It's a shame you can't do 4K 100 and 4K 120 for the people who would want that. And the 48 frame per second mode for the cinema people who want to do 24 FPS is also notable. Now, I guess there's still some niche uses for the Pro. Oh, here's another setting that's different. The Lite unit does not seem to have the D-log, the flat color profile that's better for color grading. That's going to be a big one for people who want to do cinematic stuff, or even just people like me who like to post to YouTube but just don't like DJI's default color profile and like to customize it that well. Like to let their editor customize it. I'm a terrible color grader. Let's see here, 47 minutes of recording on board. But what are our camera settings? If we go to 4K 60, that's 33 minutes. Well, that's still a decent amount of onboard recording. The Pro Air unit only has 4 minutes of recording at 4K 100 and really has to use an SD card. Since the Lite unit doesn't have an SD card slot, it's good that there's enough recording to do a reasonable amount of recording. For this first test, we are going to be at 60 megabits per second at max output power, that is 700 milliwatts, and we're going to compare it to the O4 Pro test that we did previously, as well as the O3 that we did in the previous video. And our camera is going to be 4K 60, ugh. Oh, 1080 120 is there. We're going to be at, okay, 4K 60, sure, because we got to get 4K recording. I really wish I could be at 100. And we will just repeat the flight around the perimeter of the property, and we'll see how it holds in. The big thing I noticed when I flew the Pro was that as we got to right about here-ish, yeah, the Pro was able to hold on to its 60 megabit per second bit rate as we came through here, whereas the Lite is not. You know, in Chris Rosser's output power testing, he remarked that the Lite unit was about on par with the O3, and I think that's kind of what we're seeing here. The performance of the Lite unit is similar to the O3 in terms of like its range and penetration and output power, but the O4 is like better. Now let's do the flying up the road test. I am positioned exactly the same as I am in every other test, at least as close as is humanly possible. And again, we already see the bitrate dropping. It's not holding that rock solid 60 megabits per second like the Pro did. It's still doing pretty good, you know, on a grand scheme of things. But as we come up around this turn, oh, it's already dropping. Oh, wow.
RF signal low.
What's going on? Oh, it's, what's going on? It's not, oh, yeah. Oh, no, climb out. Oh, right, I have an EP2 receiver in this. This is not an EP1 receiver. It's got the Express LRS ceramic antenna. So, yeah, okay. I may need to change my, this is a racing bird, not a long-range bird. All right, here we go. Coming around. So it hung in. Oh, it's bad. It's bad. It's struggling. It's struggling hard. I'm not as low as I was with the O4 or the O3 either. It's struggling hard. Oh, that was an actual failsafe. Let's get out of here. Whoo! So, definitively worse range and penetration than the O4 Pro. And I would say even a little worse than the O3. We did this test just yesterday. The O3 did better than that. The O3 doesn't have like the 60 megabit per second mode or the racing mode, so there are some features that the Lite offers that the O3 doesn't. But in terms of just pure range penetration and usable image, I think even the O3 did a little better. Well, speaking of the racing mode, let's give that a try. And we're going to go racing mode. And 700 milliwatts. Yeah, we'll go racing mode max power, and then we'll go to 25 milliwatts like it was a real race. That is going to lock us to 1080p 100 and 4.3, but that's okay. Unlike my Pro, where I had it in an AOS 5 freestyle frame, this is an actual racing bird. I don't quite have the full 45 degrees of up tilt here because of the way the camera's mounted, so that's why I might not be going as fast as you might have expected from a top-tier racer like myself. Ooh. Honestly, I'm not too embarrassed about this. Oh wait, I forgot my course. I gotta cycle around, then over the top, then back down under, then back around, and then back over, and back around under again, then back around and... Oh gosh, oh, whoops, almost ate it. Pull it back together, Bardwell. The difference in latency between the Pro and the Lite, 15 versus 22 milliseconds, there's going to be some people who are very concerned about that and can tell, and other people who just, 5 milliseconds who really cares. There definitely, are people who want that extra 5 milliseconds back, but for somebody like me, that's not going to be the difference, as you can tell, between, winning and losing a race. Damn it. Oh, right off my head. Right off my head. I'm going to blame the G3 for that. The way that they freaking mount. I have to shift them up my head instead of having them... Oh yeah, that was all the G3's fault, not my fault. Next we're going to run this at 25 milliwatts because that's actually what you would do when you were racing. And this is the test I did with the Pro unit. Yeah, we're immediately... Oh wow. See, that's not great. Let's say I'm racing and I'm standing on my porch, right? And the race's course is let's say it's a big race course, so maybe it's my yard. On many race courses you would just be flying in a big area like this, pretty close to yourself. I'm seeing drops down to 15 megabits per second, not very far away, and honestly, that means that the latency is being affected too, although there's no way to know exactly how much. And the image quality is degrading. As we drop to 1311, let's go fast. Let's just do that same course, because the reduction in bitrate will be more apparent, and frankly, the change in latency may affect even a crappy pilot like me. And this battery is not happy. Oh, this is a trash battery. So the bitrate, as long as I stay up here, it's holding in. But when I go down here, does it dip? Yeah. Yeah, see, as the bitrate starts to drop, the ground gets really muddled. I don't know. That's not as confidence inspiring. And the thing is, well, just turn up your output power. The race director's not going to let you do that, because you'll screw up everybody else. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of smearing and blocking. Yeah, right there. Yeah, oh, that's terrible, right? If that happened to me during a race, I would not be happy. I don't know. Would you be that far away when you were racing? Would there be obstacles like that when you were racing? Sometimes people race and they're just on a soccer field with gates right in front of them, and they're literally never more than 100 feet away and there's no obstacles at all, and I think this is going to hang in just fine. But especially at 25 milliwatts, the way it's breaking up, not very far away, I think that could get in the way of your ability to race effectively. So, Let's look at the differences between the cameras on the O4 Pro, the O4 Lite, and yes, we're going to include the O3 with a little bit more granularity. We're going to put the quadcopter in 3 locations. One sort of right here back on the porch, so you've got some dark stuff in the foreground and bright stuff in the background. Then right here, and this is going to give us a little bit more of a view of the branches on the trees, a little bit of fine detail, as well as a sense of the field of view. By the way, all of these cameras are set to the widest field of view they support, that is normal for the O4 Lite and ultra wide for the O3 and the Pro. And after we get a nice look at the falling snow here, there's no sunshine, so there's no contrast, but maybe they can make it work for us, right? It'll be controlled lighting. Then we're going to go over here, and now we really have a lot of detail in the trees and so forth. And oh yeah, my my O4 Lite overheated. It overheats in like 30 or 45 seconds if you don't have temperature protection on. Here now is the O4 Pro, and the difference in the ultra-wide versus the wide field of view is massive. In fact, you would really never use this field of view, in my opinion, unless you were planning to do like gyroflow stabilization, in which case it would crop in, and that, I think, is the whole reason for this. It'll be interesting to see how the Lite crops in when you turn stabilization on and how much more narrow it gets. But this is a nice wide, too wide, really. We're going to also do some recordings in the wide field of view so that you can get a better sense of what it would really look like most of the time. But in the meantime, feel free to zoom in on this, pause it, and see what you think. And finally, here's the O3, also set to ultra wide and all set to auto settings. So it's handling the exposure and everything itself. I do think we're seeing a pretty significant difference between the way the O3 handles this exposure and the way the O4 did. Next, we'll bring it to the second location. We'll see what we think of the comparison. I'll give you my thoughts a little bit later, but you can form your own opinions. And then after a second of this, we'll take it over to the third location. And again, I was in a bit of a hurry to keep it from overheating. It overheated super fast. Not as fast as the Lite, but the O4 was really doing a fantastic job of not overheating, even with temperature protection turned off. The first thing that stands out to me, setting aside the field of view differences, is just what a difference the larger sensor on both the O3 and the O4 Pro makes. Here, looking at the O4 Lite, we can see that the shadows are relatively dark, and there is kind of a lack of nuance in the shading of the colors. I can't think of a better way to put it than that. If you look at the shadow areas of the O4 Pro's image, look at the trees in the distance, the shadows on the bushes and the bark on the tree to the left, it just seems like they're not quite shadowed out the way they are on the Lite. It seems like there's more detail there. And that's probably because the 1/2 with the 1/2 inch sensor on the O4 Pro has more dynamic range than the 1/1.3 inch sensor on the Lite. In addition, it really seems like there's more, I don't know how to put it other than nuance in the colors. If you look at the grayish blue wall in the lower right hand corner, it just seems like it has more gradations of color there. It's smoother. I don't know how to put it. They're both putting out the same 8-bit files. It just seems like the sensor on the O4 Pro is doing a better job, both with dynamic range and with colors. And frankly, if we compare to the O3, it seems to be doing a pretty good job too. In fact, in some ways, the shadows look a little bit lighter than the O4. It's hard to believe that the 1/1.7 inch sensor in the O3 is as good as the 1/2 inch sensor in the O4. And I have to guess that maybe the O3 just exposed a little bit brighter because of changes in lighting. Nevertheless, the O3 is doing a pretty good job. I think the difference between these two shots is really telling of the benefit that the O4's larger sensor gives. Notice that if you look out into the highlighted areas, the O4 is still giving some detail on the top of the tree that's visible in the distance, and so is the O3. They're both doing a decent job of exposing for the highlight, but the O3 is nearly completely shadowed out when we go under the porch, whereas the O4 is showing details under the roof and details in the shadows of the chairs that the O3 simply can't reproduce. The O4 definitively has a better dynamic range, and it has a larger sensor. And this is what the Lite looks like when you turn on image stabilization and it crops in on the image. It's unusable. It's too cropped in. I don't know. It overheated and shut off. DJI is very good at telling you the things that you want to hear, and those things that they tell you are true, but they're also very good at leaving out the things that if they told you them, you would be disappointed, and you don't guess them because you're just so excited about the things they are giving you that then when you get the product, you're like, oh, why didn't you tell me this? And they're like, because you wouldn't have been excited to buy it. And I'm not mad about it, but I am a little bit mad at myself that every time there's a new DJI product release, I kind of fall for it. I was so excited at the very existence of a DJI video transmitter, a 10 or 11 gram DJI video transmitter that could do 4K onboard recording. I am so excited about that, but in my head, I built it up to be a lot of things, and it isn't all of those things. It's some of those things, and it's pretty amazing, especially at the price they're selling it at. Now that it's actually come out and retail pricing has been announced, it's $110. That's extremely compelling. So who is the O4 Lite perfect for? Well, anybody who is just a normal pilot who wants to put an amazing video transmitter on a micro drone that couldn't easily carry something like the O3 or the O4 Pro. It is a fantastic choice. DJI pilots have never had so much accessibility to micro drones as they have with the O4 Lite. And in that respect, it ticks all the boxes that it ever needed to tick. The camera is not going to offer all of the cinematic things that you might have wanted. And no, I'm not just talking about image quality, although the image quality is probably not good enough to satisfy some professionals. Although, hey, you make do with what you've got, right? But the O4 Pro is going to give you, well, near GoPro or DJI Action level image quality, certainly enough for professional use, especially given its size and weight. The camera is just not there in terms of its dynamic range, in terms of its low light sensitivity. Also, the field of view is way too zoomed in for cinematic purposes, especially if you're going to use stabilization. So just throw the light out for cinematic purposes for most people. But for just your typical person who wants to go fly and have fun, it's okay. It's fine. It's more than good enough. Frankly, it's a little bit insulting that in this day and age, DJI has raised the bar so high that I'm calling something like this, it's fine. Because if you gave me this 2 years ago, I would be absolutely blown away. And I really should be today as well. But DJI has raised the bar, and the O4 Pro is the new bar. And if you compare the O4 Lite to the O4 Pro, or heck, even the O3, in terms of image quality, in terms of low light sensitivity, in terms of dynamic range, even the O3 beats the Lite. In terms of field of view and use with stabilization for cinematic purposes, the O3 beats the Lite, and the O4 beats that. So there are going to be many people for whom the Lite just doesn't measure up. It's not just a smaller version of the O4 with slightly reduced range. Well, more than slightly reduced range, sort of significantly reduced range. There are many ways in which the Lite, you really are making some compromises to get it. And if you don't care about those compromises, then fantastic. But if you do care about those compromises, you're going to be paying like twice as much to get the O4 Pro. Or heck, maybe some of you are just going to stick with the O3. It's still pretty freaking good, even against the O4. If you haven't seen my original review of the O4, I'm going to put a card on screen to that. In fact, I'm going to put a card to the whole playlist. There's a lot of content to be made about these things, a lot of questions being asked. I'm going to put a card to that whole playlist. You can go check out the original review, or if you've already seen that, go check out the playlist and see what other things are available. In addition, I've got links in the video description below to places where you can purchase this. And as you probably know by now, they're affiliate links, and it means a lot when you click that link before you make any purchase. I'll see you in the next one.